Okay, welcome to 7th grade lesson 3 investigation 2. This is solubility. We are going to look at the solubility of solid substances in different fluids. So today we're going to look at actually 5 different substances. This is 4 that you guys are going to do, but I will demonstrate the mineral oil. Okay, so these are wells. This is a well plate. This is the picture of it. A well plate has these little like bubbles or half circles, half spheres of space where you can put different substances and then mix it up inside of there. The stick, the toothpick, is what you're going to use to mix each substance, and we're going to do it specific to each fluid. So when we get to the part that you guys are going to do, I'll explain that, but for now we're just going to do flour, sugar, and salt with some mineral oil. Okay, so let me cover up these instructions so I can get started with the first example. So our first example is flour. So you have a little cup of flour. It says flour. And you're going to put a tiny little scoop into the flour. Okay? And make sure it comes out. Okay, there we go. And then we are going to do a tiny little scoop of sugar. And this is just for the demonstration. Okay. And then a tiny little scoop of salt. Try not to spill these as you collect them, okay? So we have these 3 solid substances, and then we have our mineral oil, and I am going to put 5 drops into each one and then mix it with a toothpick. Okay, so we are going to mix the salt in here. Okay, and I know it's hard to see, but I have the salt here, mixing the salt, and I don't see it mixing. Then I'm going to mix the sugar. And see how I'm using the same toothpick because it's the same fluid, okay? Mix that up. I can still hear the grains in it. And then I'm going to mix up the flour. And the flour, does it dissolve? It's still pretty chunky. So I'm going to say it does not dissolve in oil. Okay, so I still see a lot of chunks. So what I'm going to do for that is grab my paper. Let me go grab my paper, and I'm going to write down what I saw. So what you see is that for and again, here it says 5 drops of the liquids and 1 small scoop of the solids. And then here for mineral oil, we saw that it did not dissolve, okay? N, so did not dissolve, okay? For all 3. Sound good? All right, so what we're gonna do next is set up the rest of them so that you guys can do that. So this is what your well plate looks like, okay? And your well plate is going to have all of the circles filled up, okay? All of the wells. So we are going to put everything in here so you can decide who's going to scoop the flour, okay? So each person who is scooping the flour, they scoop the flour. So we're going to scoop the flour and put 1 small scoop and kind of flatten it out like this, okay? And you do 4 small scoops, 1 in each well. Okay, that's the flour. And then another person's going to grab the sugar and put sugar, and try not to spill. So have a steady hand. And last but not, and you want to make sure it's empty. And so that's the sugar. And last but not least, we have salt. Salt, you're going to put 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, so you have everything filled in. So what you're going to do next is you're going to put 5 drops of each substance or liquid substance in there. So grab the hydrogen peroxide first. So this can be another person's job. Grab the hydrogen peroxide. So I have hydrogen peroxide here. Okay. And you're going to use your pipette, and you're going to do 5 drops in each of the 3 wells. So I'm going to do that now. 1, 2, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2. And if you're not sure how much you put in, just make sure you have enough to mix it together, okay? So hydrogen peroxide, leave that there for a second. Isopropyl alcohol, that's this one here, okay? So I'm going to put 5 drops. 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2. Okay. Next is water. I have water here. This little guy. And you can suck it up into the pipette. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, and then you have vinegar. Okay, last but not least, the vinegar. 1, 2, 4, 5. Oh, I need a little more. Okay, I have 5 in each one. So what you guys need to do now that you have everything set up is you have all of these toothpicks, and each person, so like 4 different people are going to stir. So I would have the vinegar person stir that one and start at the salt, move up to the sugar, then do the flour. Okay, so like that person is going to stir all of those, and then this next one is going to stir all the waters, and then the next one's going to stir all the isopropyl alcohol, and the next one's going to stir all the hydrogen peroxide. So it should be similar to this. Okay, this is the procedure. So person number 1 can take the vinegar and they can stir it. Okay, I'm going to remove these so we can see what's going on here. Okay, so this is the vinegar, if you don't remember. And let's get a little closer. Okay, so we have the salt here. It's really hard to see. So let's mix the salt with the vinegar. And it looks like keep stirring. I still definitely have some salt left in there, so I'm going to say no for that one. And what you're going to do is fill this out. Okay. So for vinegar and salt, you're going to go no. Okay. Next is our sugar. And that is also a no. And then what about our flour? Ooh, the flour is dissolving. Look at that milky white. Okay. So the flour is dissolving. The sugar, I mean, actually, now that I'm looking at it, I don't know if you guys can see that. So if I put a color under it, look at that. The sugar's gone. Same thing with the salt. The salt is pretty much dissolved. Okay, I'm going back on my answer. Let's go back on our answer, which can totally happen. Okay, so let's do that. Let's look at our answer. Let's change it. This is why I do labs in pencil. So I'm going to say vinegar. Yes. All three dissolved. Let's look at isopropyl alcohol. So you can, oh, not isopropyl alcohol, water. So you can transfer this to another person and start stirring water and salt. Let's see if that dissolves. If you look at that with my finger underneath, it is pretty much gone. And then the sugar. So the salt is a yes. The sugar, I see a lot less salt than we started with, so the sugar is a yes. And then our flour, that's a yes. Look at that, milky. Okay, so we are going to say for water, water is a yes, and a yes. Okay. Next one is isopropyl alcohol. So we're going to do salt first. Oh, let me focus that for you. Okay. Salt, 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 and isopropyl alcohol. Let's do it. Let's see. I don't know. It's really not dissolving. I still see a lot of clumps on the bottom. It's not dissolving very well. And if you compare it, after I stir it a while, I really don't see a change here in the amount of salt. I mean, I don't know. I still see a lot of salt. And then sugar, I don't see a big change here in the sugar. Still pretty grainy, like with the mineral oil. And then here's the flour. Ooh, the flour is dissolving. Look at that. So that gets really nice and milky. So I'm going to say no for the salt, no for the sugar, yes for the flour. Okay? So this one is isopropyl alcohol. So yes for the flour, no. Oh, sorry, sugar's on the top on this one. Sugar is a yes. No, sugar is a no. Flour is a yes. And salt is a, I mean, now that I'm looking, the flour is not dissolving. So let's look at that. The flour not dissolving. So we're going to say flour did not dissolve in water. Flour did not dissolve in vinegar. Okay, because I'm thinking flour doesn't dissolve, and it didn't dissolve in this either. Okay, so I'm going to say all three did not dissolve. Okay, because you can still see the solid substance in there. Okay, so this is my new chart. Sorry about that with the flour, but this is what we do. This is experimentation. Okay, so we have up here we have salt, trying to dissolve it in hydrogen peroxide. I see a lot less than I started with. The amount of salt that's left is super small. Seeing it dissolve, okay? And dissolve means it like goes away and you can't see it anymore. Oh yeah, that's dissolved in there. Okay, it just looks like a drop of water. And then the sugar in the hydrogen peroxide, let's keep mixing. Oh yeah, that's dissolved. So that's dissolved. And then the flour here is a little confusing. So the flour is bubbling. Okay, so we have like a chemical reaction going on here. Let's see if it's soluble. I mean, in the hydrogen peroxide, it just looks like bubbles formed. That's crazy. So if anything, I would say the hydrogen peroxide, if you look, it did dissolve it. I mean, not all the way necessarily, but it turned it into this foam. So it's changing the flour, okay, in the hydrogen peroxide. So let's take a look here. So I'm going to say hydrogen peroxide dissolved flour, and it dissolved sugar, and it dissolved salt. Okay, so what you're going to do now with this plate is you're going to bring it over to the sink. It gets rinsed out, and then everything gets set back up into your tray. And if you have differing results, that is fine as long as you have evidence for that, okay? The last part of the lab, you guys are going to write 3 to 5 sentences describing what solubility is. Like, what does it mean when something is soluble, either in a liquid or like a liquid being soluble in a liquid or a solid being soluble in a liquid. What does that mean? And why is this a useful property to use if you're trying to figure out what an unknown substance is? So if you saw this powder and you didn't know it was flour, how would you know it's flour? If you saw this substance and you didn't know it was salt, how would you know it was salt? And if you saw this substance, how would you know it was sugar? Sugar versus salt, they look pretty much the same. So how would you figure out the difference? So that's something to think about and write about here down below to try to figure out what an unknown substance is. Besides tasting it, because in science class we try not to taste things. Thank you so much, and I hope this is helpful to you. Again, if you have differing answers, it's okay as long as you have evidence for that differing answer. Thank you.